Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, Finding Yourself Again, where we focus on hope, healing, and recovery from toxic narcissistic abuse. Ultimate goal is to establish self-love, healthy relationships, and ultimately find yourself. My name's Dontre. I'm a survivor of toxic abuse from a narcissist/borderline. And if you find these videos to be helpful to you, I ask that you subscribe, like, share, and watch any other videos on my channel that may be helpful to you. I ain't gonna hold you up. So with that being said, let's get to today's video. Alright, y'all. So today's video is gonna be what is a narcissist? The 9 characteristics, right? So I'm gonna give y'all the definition of basically what a narcissist is. What is narcissist personality disorder? Basically it's a mental health condition that's characterized by a long-standing pattern of exaggerated feelings of self-importance, an excessive need for admiration, and a lack of empathy for others. So you got to keep in mind that this must be diagnosed by a mental health professional based on specific criteria outlined in the DSM. The DSM stands for Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Health Disorders. What you don't want to do is self-diagnose anybody without a professional assessment. Keep this in mind, especially in today's time where people just want to use this term loosely, calling people narcissists just randomly, and they're not a mental health professional. You're probably not a mental health professional, and even if you are, you have to, there's a proper way about going about diagnosing somebody, right? Also keep in mind that many narcissists won't tell you that they are narcissists, obviously, and they may not even know themselves because most of them don't get diagnosed, and they think that they're okay. They think that they're good, they're not narcissists, they think everybody else is a narcissist but them, so they never really truly get diagnosed. So it's not like you're gonna be with somebody and truly know. You kind of just got to go based off of these characteristics, maybe offer or encourage them to get some diagnosis and treatment, and based on that, if they're narcissists, it'll probably go left anyway after you say that. So ultimately, the reason why I'm making this video is to give you a clear understanding of what a narcissist truly is by the definition and by the 9 characteristics, right? So keep in mind that you have to have at least 5 or more of the characteristics out of the 9 in order to be determined a narcissist, and they have to be consistent and basically impair the individual's life, right? So I'm going to go ahead and go down the 9 traits of NPD based on the DSM-5. So the first one is going to be a grandiose sense of self-importance, which is an exaggerated belief in one's own talents, achievements, and importance. They may fantasize about unlimited success, power, beauty, ideal love, or superiority of other people. So they're going to be fantasizing about those things. And obviously you're not going to know that because you're not a mind reader. And they're probably not going to tell you that they're fantasizing about that. But you just kind of got to pay attention to the things that they say often and the things that they pay attention to, right? The next one is going to be a preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, spending a lot of time thinking about achieving extraordinary things, having perfect relationships. An example is thinking about finding a soulmate that caters to your every need. So they're going to be thinking about things like that. How are you really going to know? Well, you're going to have to really just listen to what they're saying. Like, oh, I think I found my soulmate, and you just have to really listen to the things that they're saying. But if you get the feeling that they're living and, that they're exhibiting these type of traits, then then we could, more than likely they're going to have other traits as well. They have to have at least fives, right? So the next one is going to be belief that they're special and can only be understood by or associate with people that are of high status, feeling that ordinary people just don't get them, seeking out connections with those of higher status, etc. For example, only wanting to befriend or date people they perceive as wealthy or successful or powerful. So that is more attainable. I can see that in other people. They're only willing to date like people of a certain status or financial status or whatever the case may be, but it's typically people that are trying to update in a major way. you know People are people, you know what I mean? Like, essentially we shouldn't be out here, in my opinion, we shouldn't be out here trying to just update everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think people should try to find balance in relationships. And I think ultimately it shouldn't necessarily be about your tax bracket or your social status. I think that it should more so be about your common morals and goals and values and common things about yourselves and stuff like that. Things that you guys get along. You guys get along real well and romantically, and it should be like meaningful things. You know what I mean? Not like these materialistic things. You know what I mean? And I try to stay away from people that care about material shit. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, this is all just material shit. None of this stuff really truly matters. I mean, sure, the material stuff is kind of like a sign of accomplishment. I understand that. But at the end of the day, I'm not looking for a partner that has material things. I'm looking for a partner that likes me for who I am, as I'm sure you are. You know what I mean? So just watch out for things like that. All right, y'all. So the next one is going to be a need for excessive admiration. Constantly seeking praise and attention from others and being very sensitive to criticism. For example, fishing for compliments and attention, needing constant validation, or becoming upset and angry when they're not praised or satisfied emotionally. I went through this before in my old relationship. My partner needed so much excessive admiration that she ended up getting it from another person and other people outside of me. And obviously that don't make me feel good. It probably don't make you or anybody else feel good when your partner needs that much excessive admiration. But when you come across people that need excessive attention and admiration, and it seems like you're just not giving them enough, or they need so much from you, it's a red flag. They're more than likely, this is a toxic situation, and you're gonna have issues dealing with in a relationship like that. With somebody that constantly needs admiration and attention. You can't provide that all the time the way that they need it, right? The next one, number 5, is going to be sense of entitlement. Unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with their expectations. For example, feeling they deserve special favors or that rules don't apply to them. Because they're special, right? They're above all. They deserve special treatment. They're not just your average person, right? So that's the way that they view the world. You know what I mean? Like, they're entitled. They have unreasonable expectations, and they expect unreasonable favorable treatment and shit like that. That's another one. The next one is number 6. It's interpersonally exploitative behavior. So this is taking advantage of others to achieve their own needs and wants. In people, these are like their personal relationships, right, with people that they got in their life, obviously, but it could be others as well. For example, using people to get ahead at work, manipulating friends, disregarding others' feelings or needs. So you can look for things of that nature. Number 7 is going to be lack of empathy, unwillingness to recognize or identify with the feelings or needs of others. For example, difficulty understanding why someone else is upset. Or dismissing others' pain or being cold or uncaring. I had that happen in my last relationship where I had all of that happen, in the end stages of the relationship. I'm questioning, like, why are you doing this to me? And I'm upset, emotional, I'm broke down, it's the worst that you could ever see me, I'm emotional, I'm broke down. And my partner, I remember just looking at her and telling her, like, I can't believe you're doing this to me, and I looked at her and I'm like, do you even care? Like, do you even love me? Like why are you doing this, And she just looked at me, like, on everything, man. Like, she just looked right at me and just had no expression, just didn't care, and me, I'm expecting her to, like, be there for me and offer me, like, emotional support and hug me and say, hey, I'm so sorry for this, and I have problems or whatever. No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that. So pay attention to that one, man. In today's time, empathy is a big thing when it comes to me taking a person seriously when it comes to dating, in the dating market. I'm not taking you seriously if I sense that you don't have enough empathy for me or for people, That's a big one for me. Number 8 is going to be envy of others or belief that others are envious of them. Feeling jealous of others' successes or possessions, or believing that others are intensely jealous of their own. For example, belittling someone else's achievements out of jealousy or constantly mentioning others' jealousy for them. So that one's pretty self-explanatory. It's having envy or assuming envy on other people. So that's that, number 8, and the next one is the last one, and it's number 9. And it is demonstration of haughty behaviors or attitudes, coming across as conceited, boastful, or condescending. For example, looking down on others, dismissing others' opinions, acting superior in conversations. So that's what you're going to look for those. Those are the 9 characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder in the DSM. Right? So the next thing I want to talk about is the 5 out of 9 criterion, right? A person must exhibit at least 5 or more of the 9 traits consistently and in a way that causes significant distress or impairment in that person's life. Occasional display of 1 or 2 of these traits does not mean someone has NPD. These are patterns of behavior. That's what you need to understand. These are patterns of behavior. This isn't just like once here, once there, out the blue this, out the blue that. Yeah, it's toxic. Yeah, I get it. But if it's out the blue here, out the blue there, it's a rare occasion, it's not a consistent behavior, then it's more than likely not NPD. Remember, you're not a mental health professional to be diagnosing people with this type of shit. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is important nuances and additional key points. All right, so narcissistic traits exist on a spectrum. Some people may have a few traits without meeting the criteria of NPD. So some people may have 1 or 2 or 3 or even 4, but if they don't have at least 5 or more, they're not, and it's not in the consistent behavior that causes impairment on their life and all meets the criteria, then they don't meet the criteria for NPD. That's what you need to understand. So they need to have at least 5 or more. The next thing is an impact on relationships. These traits, regardless of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 9, they can significantly impact the person with NPD's relationships with family, friends, colleagues, and romantic partners, often leading to conflict and dissatisfaction for those around them, and vice versa, because the person with NPD is, they have a lot going on, you know what I mean? And it's a lot to deal with. The next thing I want to talk about is underlying insecurity. Although narcissists project an image of superiority, it's often masks the underlying feelings of insecurity and vulnerability. So they project like they're secure, right? But in reality, there's an underlying feeling of insecurity and vulnerability right there, you know? So that's something to understand about that. The next thing is they're not always conscious, right? People with NPD may not be fully aware of how their behavior affects others. Most of them know right from wrong, obviously, but they're not exactly knowing how their behavior is affecting other people. And I think partially that's just because this is their way of life. This is the way that they have learned to survive. You know what I mean? So this is the way they survive, you know? The next is seeking professional help. I want you to know that this is a serious mental health disorder, right? And it requires assistance from a mental health professional. If you suspect that you yourself or someone you know has NPD, encourage seeking professional evaluation and treatment in an encouraging manner. Therapy can benefit people with NPD and their relationships. It's very important to go about this in an encouraging, compassionate way. We're not here to bash people, bring people down, make people feel like monsters for having NPD. At the end of the day, they have NPD for something that's happened to them, most likely trauma in their early life. And they you know, this has had an impact on them to the point where they have a disorder for life now, you know. So I want you to try to understand and have some understanding and a little bit of compassion with that, you know what I mean? Like, you know, have some understanding for that, and some thought about that, you know, before just blaming people. Oh, they're horrible people. You know, I know that they've hurt you. I've been hurt by them, you know, and I do what I can to not be hurt by them anymore. But at the end of the day, they're still human beings, and they have been through this. They have been through something that caused them to be the way that they are, right? The next is focus on behavior, not labels. Focus on understanding behaviors rather than just going around labeling people. Understanding the traits can help in navigating difficult interactions. So, you know, just try to understand the traits. You know, you don't got to go around labeling people, and, you know, that's not going to do you any good anyway. You know what I mean? So just do your part in understanding the traits and protect yourself. You know what I mean? The next is self-reflection. If some of you recognize that these traits are in you, remember to have self-compassion and remember that this is not your fault. This may be the beginning of your personal growth journey. And if any of these traits are causing you significant issues, I advise you to seek professional help in therapy. You know, therapy has been a major help for me as a survivor of narcissistic and borderline abuse. And I'm sure it has been for many other people. And at the end of the day, I understand that, you know, you may be here as a survivor. You may be here as a, you know, you may be wondering yourself, you know, am I a narcissist? And, you know, whether you are or whether you're not, have compassion for yourself and for who you are. And, as you know, it's about where you're going in life. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, focus on where you're going And I think therapy is good for anybody and everybody, regardless of if you have a disorder or not. But I think it's really been a major game changer on my mental health in this process and this journey. And I really encourage you, if you suspect that you or anybody that you know has NPD, BPD, or any type of cluster B disorder, because it can really help you out, and it can really provide you with a lot of skills that you can use in your life. All right, y'all. So that's it for the video. I hope that these 9 traits can help you clearly identify what to look for in yourself or others. It may be a good idea to get to know these traits, if you need to write them down and understand them, in order to protect yourself moving forward. Like me, I've gotten to know these traits, and I've also got to know a lot of other toxic characteristics, just in general. If you're interested to know other red flags, especially when it comes to dating, you could check out my video on that. I have a whole bunch of red flags when it comes to dating. You might find that interesting. But nevertheless, if you got something out of today's video, I'm going to ask that you subscribe, hit the like button, and share to get my content out there to help others just like yourself. I'm trying to reach out to more people and get this content out there, to help people like me, survivors, and people that currently have disorders, I want this to be a place of hope, healing, and recovery, and ultimately finding yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. With that being said, I look forward to seeing y'all in my next video. Stay tuned. I drop videos daily. I hope you guys are having self-compassion and love for yourself, exercising, taking care of yourself, eating healthy food, and enjoying yourself. All right, guys. I'll see you guys later. Bye.